Good evening, I'm Gerg Cahiles sitting in for Pinky Web. Tonight, we ask the questions, we tackle the issues, we clarify matters, and we get on point. In the wake of the campaign season, the Department of Social Welfare and Development has submitted the guidelines in the granting of financial aid to qualified beneficiaries. The Commission on Elections is now reviewing these guidelines to ensure financial assistance will be shielded from politics. While the DSWD wants the Ayuda exempted from the election ban, majority of respondents in a survey show they support the COMELEC's position not to allow financial aid to be used during the elections. Let's get on point with COMELEC Spokesperson Atty. Laudiangco. Good evening, sir.
Magandang gabi po, sir, and to all the viewers of On Point and Gerg Cahiles. Good evening.
Okay, sir, first and foremost, let us clarify. Natanggap na po ng COMELEC itong copy ng guidelines na isinumite ng DSWD.
That is correct po. Upon its publication, a copy was sent to COMELEC in compliance with our original grant of exemption na nire-require po sila na magbigay ng copy ng guidelines.
Okay. Kailan po ito nangyari, Attorney Rex, if you still remember?
The other day po, naibigay sa amin, I think it was published po over the weekend, yung guidelines, na-publish po sa newspaper ng ating DSWD.
Okay. When should we expect the COMELEC to come up with a decision regarding these guidelines? Kasi kung kaklaruhin ko lang po, kailangan po ng approval ng COMELEC nito bago ma-implement. Tama po ba?
No, sir. The guidelines are part of the requirements of the COMELEC, and that is also their commitment to the President po as part of the implementation of the General Appropriations Act. And knowing that po, we require the same guidelines from them na to be issued prior to the implementation of the exemption granted to them. Yung po kasing exemption sa disbursement of public funds, including that of the social services, will start and will commence on March 28 po. Dahil dyan po sa 45-day period, papasok yung prohibition ng batas.
Ito po yung March 28 na pinag-uusapan po, Attorney Rex?
That is correct. Kaya po yung ating mga agencies like the DSWD, dun sa kanilang AICs, ACAPs, and 4Ps, si DOLE po sa tupad, yun naman pong si DOH sa MAIP, maaga po silang nag-apply ng kanilang exemptions dahil ito pong mga parte na to ay may implement March 28 onwards.
Well, last month, Attorney Rex, COMELEC Chairman Gerg Cahiles said COMELEC can't block political candidates from distributing Ayuda. Citing nga po itong supposed loophole sa batas na ang ban sa social services will start on March 28 pa. So, I don't know if you were able to see or read the entire guidelines, sir, but do you think that the guidelines sent by DSWD will resolve that legal loophole?
That is correct po. Nakita naman namin na talagang strictly based on their implementation, wala naman pong nabanggit doon na presence. But we have to remember po na in the grant of the exemption, originally po sa mga ganitong public services, ang condition lang po ng COMELEC, first, it should not influence the elections, hindi po magamit sa interes ng ating mga ilang politiko at kandidato, at yun po, yung dapat continuing ang report sa COMELEC insofar as the expenditure, the budget, the recipients, and of course, the period na covered. Pero dinagdagan po ng COMELEC yan dun sa mga nag-grant na exemption na dapat wala pong presence ng any politician, any candidate in whatever form doon po sa pagbibigay ng ayuda. And yun isip nga po yung pong to give us a copy of the guidelines and to strictly implement such. Meron pa pong dinagdag na bago ang COMELEC. It was Resolution 11-118, which was promulgated on February 21. So in addition po dun sa nabanggit ko ng mga conditions, yung pong AICs, ACAP, 4Ps, MAIP at yung pong ating tupad, and any other ayuda na mabibigyan man ng exemption, and despite the exemption, ay bawal pa rin ipamigay starting May 2 hanggang May 12. So despite and over their exemptions, kahit po meron kami exemption dyan, May 2 to May 12, bawal na bawal pong ipamigay.
Sir, can you briefly tell us the idea behind that May 2 to May 12 na ban on distribution of ayuda?
That is not the first time. Kung matatandaan nyo po nung barangay and SK elections last 2023, na-implement na rin po natin yan. And the idea behind that is that to ensure na hindi magagamit pang influence, hindi magagamit pang vote buying ang mga ayuda na ito. Kasi kahit po bawalan namin, baka merong may kiklaim na ganito, ganyan, o kaya po in whatever form, maaaring pumasok yung mga kandidato as an added form of insurance and security, bawal na bawal po ipamigay yan 10 days, including the day of the election.
Attorney Rex, so in short, is the COMELEC satisfied with the guidelines sent by DSWD and other agencies in relation to the Ayuda distribution guidelines?
In so far as DSWD is concerned, ang tingin po namin on the preliminary side, compliant naman po sila dito. And despite, kung sabihin man po natin, magkaroon man ng issue sa guidelines na yan, our conditions, the conditions that we impose will prevail over any guidelines. Kaya nga po ganun kabigat yung mga binigay na conditions ni COMELEC. Meron na condition doon sa naunang grant. Dinagdagan pa namin dito na talagang pinagbabawal absolutely ang pamimigay over and above their exemptions from May 2 to May 12.
Sir, just in case that, some politicians will still show up and they are candidates for the 2025 elections, what will be the repercussions?
Of course, this will be the actions to be taken. If we found that the agency itself will be in cahoots or in collaboration or sila po ay nag-facilitate ng pagpasok ng kandidato, automatically, ang sabi po ni Chairman Garcia, ineffective yung naibigay na exemption, and therefore, kung itutuloy nila yung pamimigay, they are violating Section 261 of the Omnibus Election Code. And this is an election offense. This is a criminal offense. Pangalawa, yung pong ating mga politicians or candidates na papasok dito at magbabiolate ng condition, one, they will be facing the same election offense po. Two, they will be facing another set of charges for election offense na abuse of state resources. Yung ikalawa po, ituturing namin itong vote buying. That is a third violation. And lastly, we will consider that as a violation of 2 COMELEC resolutions, and that would result in their disqualification. And we have to remember, yung pong election offense, that is a criminal offense punishable by imprisonment of 1 to 6 years. Kasama rin po yung pagkakatanggal or forfeiture ng right to suffrage and perpetual disqualification to hold public office. Hindi po magdadalawang isip ang COMELEC gawin lahat yan. So klaro po dito that the implementing agency as well as the politicians involved will be charged in case that there will be violations to the guidelines. Now, Attorney, that is correct. If there are willful and intentional violations po.
All right. Now, Attorney Rex, let's go to this reports that, yung vote buying naman involving in the guise of ayuda, na sinasabing pinamimigay daw via GCash or other online platforms. Have you received such reports already, or are we monitoring that right now?
We are aware and we are monitoring that, and we are expecting din po from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas to issue a circular similar to what they did in the 2023 barangay elections. Ang ginawa po nila noon, nag-issue sila on their own together with the Anti-Money Laundering Council ng circulars to the platforms, the financial platforms. One, ang sinasabi po nila is to monitor strictly the cash in and cash out. Two, to monitor and preserve evidence of any suspicious multiple transactions. Ito po yung bigla na lang sa isang lugar na hindi naman nung karaming transaction dati, biglang dumami, days leading before the election na halos pare-pareho yung mga amounts. Yung mga large transactions ay nilimit din po nila at least a few days before the election. At ang sinasabi nga po namin, yung sa utos ng preservation ng digital evidence, kung iniisip nila na parang anonymous po sila sa vote buying, mamimigay ng pera, nagkakamali po sila. Mas madali pong ebidensya dahil tandaan po natin, yung pong mga recipients, yung pong magbibigay ay pare-pareho po silang registered, yung kanilang mga IDs ay nakarecord po lahat at matitrace po natin yan.
Alright, but how cooperative are these platforms po so far, based on experience, Attorney?
They are very cooperative po. In fact, yung pong bagay na to, si Globe po mismo ang nakipag-usap sa amin, si GCash. And they have no choice but to comply with the orders of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas because under law, they're operating within the supervision of BSP po. Otherwise, makakancel po ang kanilang mga privileges and operations dito.
All right, we will take a short break with COMELEC Spokesperson Attorney John Rex Laudiangco. So stay tuned. This is On Point. Welcome back. You're watching On Point, still with COMELEC Spokesperson Attorney John Rex Laudiangco. Attorney, let's now talk about the proactive response of COMELEC to monitor the distribution of Ayuda para ma-ensure na nasusunod yung guidelines. How will you do it?
That's correct po, no? Our COMELEC personnel, despite the limitation on the numbers po, no, we are being informed and the agencies are informing us, given na may report nga po kung kailan ito gagawin at yung mga lugar, hanggat maaari po, pinupuntahan po namin yan. We're also asking our partners, the Citizens Arm, to help us monitor these mga ayuda, pamimigay po ng ayuda ng mga ating ahensya. Kaya po tumatanggap din po kami mula sa ating mga kababayan ng mga reports at ina-assure po natin sila that we will preserve their anonymity. Hinihiling lang po namin ma-document o kaya maibigay sa amin ang sapat na impormasyon at kung may paglabag mo po, COMELEC ang mangongolekta ng ebidensya, COMELEC ang magki-case build-up, and COMELEC will be filing and prosecuting these cases. Itatago po namin ang kanilang identities.
Kaya importante po talaga yung citizens' participation in terms of reporting these kinds of violations. Ngayon po, Attorney Rex, we're under the impression that the distribution of Ayuda is still ongoing. May mga natatanggap na po ba kayong reklamo in relation to possible or presence of politicians or any materials na nire-relate yung sarili nila to the Ayuda?
Yes, we have been receiving reports, pero tatandaan po natin kasi yung pong exemption, yung grant po, yung ating mga conditions, that will take effect starting March 28 pa po. Dahil ayon sa Section 261 po ng Omnibus Election Code, yung pong ban, yung pong subject po ng exemption na to will only start on March 28. So sa ngayon po, hindi pa covered ng ating pong ban, yung mga ginagawang pamimigay ng ayuda at yung mga hiningi po ng exemption sa amin ay mag-take effect pa lamang, pati yung conditions, on March 28 po.
Okay, despite the guidelines. So pre-March 28 activities, kahit may reklamo, so hindi pa natin maaaktuhan. Now, with here, Attorney...
With your kind permission po, let me clarify. Okay. Yung pong guidelines, yung pong ating mga conditions, that will only take effect on March 28
Alright,
because the exemption na binigay po natin, yung powers ng COMELEC to regulate that will start on March 28. But we have to remember, meron na rin pong mga candidates ngayon, yung senators of party list. Yung local po na kasi na nag-file ng COC, they are deemed not yet candidates po. Yan po ang sabi ng Supreme Court sa Piñera versus COMELEC. Pero doon po sa mga candidates now, senators and party lists, kung may malaman po kami na gagamitin nila ang pag-aari, ang pondo ng bayan po to pursue their candidacy, we will consider that already as vote buying dahil candidate na sila and also a case for abuse of state resources. So kami po ay nagbabantay na kahit pa yung aming conditions ay mag-take effect on March 28.
All right. Thank you very much for that clarification. That's Attorney Rex Laudiangco, the spokesperson of COMELEC. Sir, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And now here...
Karangalan po, mabuhay po.
Now here in the studio is DSWD Spokesperson Assistant Secretary Irene Dumlao. Good evening po, Assistant Secretary Dumlao.
Hi, good evening.
Well, Attorney Rex and I were discussing about the guidelines, and he's clarifying that it will be in effect starting March 28. So, what will happen to those ayuda distribution na nagjo-join yung mga politicians siguro beginning the campaign season, no? Nitong February hanggang March 28?
Well, in the memorandum that was issued by COMELEC to the DSWD pertaining to our request for the exemption on public fund spending, nakalagay din naman doon that DSWD should ensure na walang mga politicians present during our payout activities, and at the same time walang mga campaign materials posted on our payout sites. And of course, the DSWD will strictly comply with that directive from the COMELEC. And in addition to that, we will also ensure submission of the guidelines for these programs and services that we are implementing.
All right. Now, in January, Assistant Secretary, we were able to talk with Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong, and he discussed his criticisms of the implementation of the Ayuda programs of the government. So I'll enjoin you to watch a portion of that interview, and I will ask for your reaction after. Let's play that.
Lawmakers indiscriminately giving out ACAP funds AX funds, itong mga ayuda na gusto pa nilang palabasin na akala mo sarili nilang pera yung kanilang ibinibigay. Nakita namin yan eh. Sometimes we receive limited amount of AKAP or AX, sabi natin. Ano? Pag AX, kami ang gumagawa ng listahan. Ang DSWD ang gagawa ng listahan. No? Kasi because they know better, sabi ko nga, they know who are the people who really need the fund. Pero pag lawmaker, hindi. Ang nangyayari sa kanila, karamihan sa kanila, kung sino yung supporter nila, ang bibigyan nila. Assuming na merong talagang legitimate na indigence yung nabigyan nila, the mere fact that they're not sharing their data with us, then there's a big possibility that the local government, kung may matanggap man kaming AKAP o AX, mabibigyan namin yung the same people who were listed in their, were included in their listing.
Your reaction first, Assistant Secretary, about the lack of data sharing among the LGUs, according to Mayor Magalong and the lawmakers, in relation to the beneficiaries of the Ayuda programs. Paano po nangyayari yun na walang data sharing?
Well, first and foremost, with all due respect and sincerest appreciation to Mayor Magalong for his intent na talagang ma-ensure na maayos, effectively and efficiently implemented ang mga social welfare programs and services. We'd like to stress that our guidelines provide na dapat nabivet ng mga social workers natin itong mga prospective beneficiaries for our Ayuda programs. And yan naman po ang ginagawa ng DSWD. Talagang rini-review namin lahat ng mga documentary requirements that are submitted. We also ensure that the assessment of our social workers are properly done or conducted. So, with respect to the concern na walang data sharing, ganito kasi yun sa implementation ng ating like assistance to individuals in crisis situation. Dalawa yan. Pwedeng magkaroon ng walk-in cases o yung mga beneficiaries mismo pupunta sa aming mga opisina or may mga i-refer po ng kanilang respective local government units. We recognize that some LGUs have limited resources so they couldn't assist their constituents. So, i-refer nila sa DSWD. And as part of our mandate to provide augmentation support and resource augmentation to local government units, we accommodate this request, this endorsement. But like what I've earlier mentioned, all of this go through the vetting process, the assessment of our social workers. So, mahalaga yun na nakikita natin. But again, we'd like to mention that these are constituents of the various local government units that we help.
So, before I proceed, yung referral po, pwede manggaling sa LGU, pwede rin manggaling sa mga lawmakers natin.
Anyone can refer. Anyone can refer, and DSWD will always accommodate them, but subject to the vetting and the assessment of our social workers. It doesn't necessarily follow that once you are endorsed or referred to us, automatically magko-qualify ka na to the assistance being requested. There's a guidelines, there's policies that we follow, so talagang dadaan siya sa assessment.
Okay, so importante yun na nabanggit po ninyo that it will undergo vetting. And in fact, your guidelines here, if it will be followed strictly, talagang medyo mahigpit po yung gagawin ninyo. So, yung data po ba ng mga beneficiaries nitong Ayuda programs ng gobyerno under DSWD, nakastore po ba yan or papaano po, kaya bang i-access yan, let's say, ng individuals or groups na gustong tingnan? Baka mamaya na-duplicate nga daw po yung mga beneficiaries ninyo.
Yes, we actually have a system like for assistance to individuals in crisis situation. We have the CRIMS na tinatawag namin. Dito naka-encode lahat ng mga beneficiaries or mga clients whom we have served for various types of assistance. And yes, pwede naman po yung ma-access, subject of course to our compliance to data privacy procedures. Of course, kinakailangan kasi na mag-comply tayo doon sa sinasabi rin ng Data Privacy Act, no, that if there's sharing of personal information, kinakailangan that we execute a data sharing agreement. Of course, that's a best practice.
Yes.
No, depende rin doon sa processing and depende rin doon sa legitimate purpose for the sharing of the information. Yan naman, gaya ng commitment ng DSWD, pwede naman natin ma-share yan, makita, subject of course to certain limitations.
Okay, ma'am, ika-clarify lang natin So, the guidelines, the new guidelines that were submitted to COMELEC, kailan siya effective? Kasi as far as COMELEC is concerned, they can only implement it starting March 28. How about Ayuda distribution activities before May 28 while meron na namang guidelines? Effective na rin po ba ito? Kung kayo po ang tatanungin.
Is that the Ayuda para sa Kapos ang
Yes,
Kita
AKAP.
program? Yeah,
Yes.
this one was recently approved. So ngayon, inaayos pa po namin kasi wala pa naman talaga yung pondo for its implementation.
Yes, okay.
No, so we'll have to
Wala
schedule
pa.
that yet. Oo, wala pa. Well, hindi pa nare-release sa atin yung fund for that kasi just approved yung guidelines. You take note that conditional kasi ang implementation nung AKAP program, di ba, as provided under the GAA. So, ka-approve pa lang yan.
Yes.
And then, of course, the necessary procedures will have to proceed before we implement it.
Siguro the important point kasi na gusto nating pag-usapan is that baka mamaya magamit sa politika. And importante in this new guidelines sa AKAP is that yung prohibition, o yung mga posters linking a politician to AKAP as well as their presence during the distribution. Pero are we already implementing it sa iba pa nating mga ayuda?
Yes, that's correct. Yan naman ang talagang tinitiyak ng DSWD, that we insulate our programs and services from various forms of political interferences. Even if we were not reminded by the COMELEC, definitely we will do that. We have been doing that in the previous years. And apart from that, no, sa mga family development sessions ng one of our programs, the Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program, we have a specific module on active citizenship. So lagi nating sinasabi, kino-convey sa ating mga beneficiaries that these programs and services that the DSWD is implementing
Okay.
are from the government, from the national government, and not from any political actor.
Okay. Now, ma'am, kasi syempre iba yung usapin sa COMELEC. This will happen only during election period. What if may mga violations sa guidelines after the election period?
Yes.
What will happen? Ano pong mga parusa ang kakaharapin ng mga, or are we still gonna allow like elected officials to show up during ayuda distribution o hindi na talaga because it's in the guidelines, hindi nga?
Yes, of course, dahil nasa guidelines,
Oo.
we will have to faithfully comply, no? Kung
Oo.
ano yung sa sinasabi niyan. But dun sa concern mo na hindi pa naman siya covered ng implementation, especially dun sa local level,
Yes.
paano natin ginagawa? Well, of course, DSWD continues to nurture our partnership with our local partners, no, from the local government units. But at the same time, sabi ko nga, there are efforts to insulate our programs and services. So talagang tinitiyak natin na hindi magagamit yung mga programs and services natin. Kapag may mga violations, kapag may nakikita or may rini-report sa DSWD, we validate those and when we refer them to the appropriate agency like the DILG.
Okay. Para sila mag-take action.
Because wala na ang administrative supervision over local government units naman, of course, ay sa DILG. But again, sabi ko nga, we continue to nurture our partnership with them. So, ang ginagawa po natin, lalo natin mga field offices, we talk to our partners on the ground, we explain them why kinakailangan na DSWD lang ang nandun or personnel lang po natin. Because talaga naman, DSWD personnel lamang po ang nag-i-implement ng program. In fact, in the actual distribution of assistance, ang mga paymasters naman natin are DSWD personnel.
Oh, pero talaga, historically, ma'am, I apologize, pero makikita nyo naman talaga na mga mukha ng politiko, akala mo sa kanila galing yung pinamimigay na ayuda because of, that's the sad reality of it.
Yeah, that's why sabi nga natin sa DSWD, there should be a collective effort on our part, no, to really protect the programs and services that they're implementing. And we are engaging yung mga clients and beneficiaries din natin. Kasi sila nga yung direct beneficiaries or recipients of the assistance. So dapat alam nila, they arrive at informed judgment na hindi ma-influence yung kanilang decisions sapagkat iba yung sinasabi ng iba. Because they are aware that these services are being implemented by the national government.
Oo nga, sabi ko nga kay Atty. Rex kanina, the participation of citizens is very important para maayos yung guidelines and maireklamo, maisumbong yung mga gagawa ng hindi tama.
Exactly. That's why nabanggit ko kanina, one of the modules under the family development sessions of the 4Ps program ay yung active citizenship. We really have to provide information, relevant information to our beneficiaries so that they could arrive at informed judgment.
All right. Thank you very much, Assistant Secretary Irene Dumlao. And that's On Point. Join us again on Monday at 7:30 p.m. here on BNC, the Billionaire News Channel. I'm Gerg Cahiles. Thank you for watching.